But like, this is the example of nobody being too crazy and too extreme.
Yeah, what kind of lipstick did they use? What kind of clothes did they wear? Oh, attack, attack! They're not for Israel, attack!
I mean, you could filibuster, but it's just a denial of reality.
What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Grant here with Dialectically Challenged. Hope you guys are doing well. It is a nice little Sunday when I'm recording this. And before I get into what we're talking about today, I just want to say thank you so much to everybody who's been supporting the channel with these last few videos. The responses have been fantastic. I really appreciate it, guys. Thank you to everybody for even a like, comment, share, whatever. It means the world. Today, guys, we're going to be looking at a debate between Sean Fitzgerald, the actual justice warrior, versus Cenk Uygur, the Young Turks. Now, Sean happens to be one of my favorite creators out there. He's always giving us top-tier analysis and fantastic breakdowns of criminal justice issues. His opponent is Cenk Uygur, best known for being the founder of the Young Turks, being a prominent Armenian genocide denier, and for being staunchly anti-Israel. This debate was also hosted by Brad Palumbo, so cheers to Brad for being a host and an arbiter for some productive, neutral, good faith debate. And hey guys, remember we're a growing channel, so if you enjoy this type of content, please be sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you know anytime a new video drops. Your support is very much appreciated. So without further ado, let's get into it.
All right, guys, joining me now, we've got the conservative YouTuber Sean Fitzgerald and founder of the Young Turks and progressive commentator Cenk Uygur. Guys, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Really quick, why does it look like Brad Palumbo has spent the last 3 days boofing Adderalls? Look at his eyes, man. Holy shit. Dude looks cracked out of his dome.
So, Cenk, I'll come to you first. I think you have a probably very different views than me on this issue and many issues, and that's why I wanted you here. That's what we're all about, is that exchange. So when you look at these three rising star candidates and the kind of momentum that they represent, this energetic, youthful, democratic, socialist aligned, progressive challenge to kind of the democratic establishment, what is it you see there that you find positive?
Yeah, so I think, Brad, in that intro, you're kind of missing why they won, right? That's the important part. Did they win because they're for prison abolition? No, that's a deeply unpopular position. And no one knows that better than me because I wound up debating people on the left on prison abolition a couple of years ago. This started with my co-host on the Young Turks, Anna Kasparian. Prison abolitionists started attacking her. What? Okay, so, but remember, that's not only the voters barely know that, all the things that you state are not at all the reasons that they won, except for one thing, and that's Israel. And so what you're seeing here, and I'm not DSA and I'm a democratic capitalist, okay? But I'm still thrilled that they won, not because of those policy positions, but despite those policy positions, because we're so sick of the establishment. The establishment is so deeply corrupt, both on the Democratic and Republican side. And so Israel's the tip of the iceberg. It's not the whole iceberg. It just shows you if you get bribed by the Israeli lobby, you'll serve the Israeli lobby. You get bribed by Big Pharma, you'll serve Big Pharma. And the list goes on, and they all get bribed. So these guys, these three, raised their hands and said, we're not going to get bribed. We're not going to take corporate PAC money, and we're not going to take foreign government money. And the voters basically said, good enough. I'll definitely take it over that other corrupt son of a bitch like Dan Goldman, who will 100% sell us out. So now when you see an incumbent or you see an establishment Democrat or Republican, you know that brother doesn't represent you. They represent Israel and every giant corporation looking to rob you blind. So that's why they won.
So what else? The only thing I'll say is that in one of the races, Claire Valdez, her main opposition was also ardently pro-Israel. But in the anti-Israel, sorry, in the two that you describe, yes, that was a huge issue. And I don't for a second discount the significance that it played. I wonder though, like, and I will come to you, sorry, Sean, but Cenk, I get this issue is hugely important to a lot of people. They're super passionate about it. But is there any level of craziness that would be disqualifying that they could say where you still wouldn't be excited about them anyway just because they're against Israel and against the establishment?
So, no, there's only one litmus test. Are you honest and you're going to actually represent the people in your district? Or are you a dishonest son of a bitch who's going to represent the donors? So under no circumstances would I vote for someone as extreme as an incumbent, because other than Ro Khanna and Tom Massey right now, and a couple others like Sarah Jacobs, They're right now, all the Democrats and Republicans are in the middle of selling us out and merging our militaries with Israel's. That way they could steal all of our technology. They don't have to bother sending in spies like they normally do, like Jonathan Pollard and Robert Maxwell. So if an incumbent says, I'm going to turn over trillions of dollars that Americans spent on our military to Israel for free, I'm going to fight all their wars for free, I'm going to fund their genocide, and make you morally culpable. I don't know anything more extreme, more disgusting than that. So yeah, I'm going to vote for anyone opposed to that. Hey, look, to give you a sense of it, Tom Massey votes for the Republicans about 91% of the time, and so I disagree with him about 91% of the time. And I'd vote for Massey over an incumbent, any other incumbent, almost any day of the week in under these circumstances, even though he's extreme to the right of me, as these folks are a little extreme to the left of me. Because are you honest or are you not? And remember, guys, there's crazy folks down in Alabama and Mississippi that have won that think that the Muslims are about to take over or whatever, all the crazy things they think of, right? But that's because they're not representing New York. They're representing Alabama and Mississippi. And these folks are not representing Alabama or Oklahoma. They're representing New York. So it's not my job to tell them who to vote for, but I know who to vote against, and it's the corrupt, disgusting incumbents.
Okay, Sean, bringing you in here, give us your big picture take on these kind of three as rising stars, and then maybe get into what Cenk said.
It's obviously a disaster. Obviously, look, Israel has become a prominent issue among a huge section of Democratic voters, so it makes sense that they would pick the anti-Israel candidates versus the pro-Israel candidates. But, this is the example of nobody being too crazy and too extreme, and to describe these candidates as honest is absurd. I mean, what's her name? The Chevalier woman, she had to delete 3,600 of her tweets because she's trying to cover up what she actually believes. When she was asked directly about her saying that the U.S. bullied Russia in the context of Russia invading the Ukraine, she suddenly, very honestly apparently, didn't remember the context of that, as if we couldn't all figure this out. So yeah, the Democratic Party is going in a very anti-American direction. They're electing quite literal communists that support Vladimir Lenin. Again, Chevalier, wonderful pick for that particular district. I'm really hoping the Democrat ends up running third party, even though that might not even work. It didn't work for Andrew Cuomo. And yeah, this is the radicalization of the Democratic Party around one particular issue. Ironically, these people are Israel first. I mean, Cenk's in that camp. He's like, I'm against prison abolition and all these other crazy things. But when he sees candidates that are for that, he's like, well, I'll endorse them because of some allusion to honesty. It's absurd. It's ridiculous. And again, what's her name? Chevalier believes that if you commit a crime in the United States of America as an illegal immigrant and get convicted, you have double jeopardy protections from deportation. So you have better protections than even non-criminal illegal aliens in the United States of America after you commit a crime. And Cenk's signing on for that because Israel.
All right. Yeah, are you Israel first in like Sean says, Cenk?
So as I just said earlier, Israel is the tip of the iceberg. The iceberg is corruption and money in politics. So Israel is being used as a proxy, guys. So you guys could claim, oh, wow, Israel, what a random thing. It's not random. We've done $8 trillion worth of war for them. They've stolen $320 billion from us. They've stolen our nuclear triggers, our uranium, our nuclear secrets. They released Epstein upon our children. And these disgusting fascists are now invading Lebanon and making us go to war with Iran. Are they going to give us $100 billion that this war has cost us?
Notice how Sean's point was about the extreme views of these politicians like Daria Lisa Chevalier, who is insane, by the way. Shane just brings it right back to Israel. He's just using Israel as a red herring constantly throughout this debate. You'll notice that as it goes on. What he tries to do over and over is just keep going back to Israel, making this all about Israel. And that's why I think it's so funny Sean says, actually, Cenk is Israel first, because it's the only thing Cenk seems to give a shit about.
So you're talking about some rando has the congressional candidate that just won that has a past opinion about prison abolition. Is she going to be able to get that passed in Congress? No, of course not. Literally no one else is going to support that. So that has zero chance of being put into effect. On the other hand, every incumbent promises that they will continue to rob us blind and send trillions of dollars to Israel. That's real That's real. That robbery is in the middle of happening right now. But it's just one of the robberies. Then Big Pharma robs us. Big Oil gets $35 billion a year in subsidies. Why are the three of us paying for ExxonMobil's costs when they're one of the most profitable companies in the world? That is nothing but an unmitigated robbery. So if you're for the incumbents, you're for robbing Americans blind, stealing their money and giving it to big drug companies, oil companies, defense contractors. So I say hell no to that. So yes, whether it's Massey or Chevalier, I don't care. If it's as long as you have an honest opinion and you're trying to serve your citizens and not trying to serve Israel or Big Pharma or some other lobby that bought you because you're corrupt, then I'm going to vote for the honest person. You guys keep voting for the corrupt people and have them rob all of us, and I guess you celebrate that, and that's real. That they're doing that right now, and they promise to do that forever unless we vote all the sons of bitches out.
So notice what's happening here, guys. Cenk is basically laying out his entire worldview and his political hierarchy for you guys. He doesn't care how extreme somebody's policies are, as long as they aren't corrupt and are honest, specifically regarding Israel. So let's look at this logically. Candidates can have many different positive and negative traits. Corruption and dishonesty in politicians is something that nobody objectively wants. But voting for somebody who will make harmful policy is going to be much worse for everyday Americans. And Cenk's living in a fantasy land if he thinks he can just vote for honest politicians. Look at how Ilhan Omar's net worth grew to almost $30 million before she corrected it recently. That doesn't come from a salary, guys. And then look at the other side of the aisle, guys. Look at Dan Crenshaw. He ran as a populist conservative and then became just as corrupt as everybody else. I'm not saying we shouldn't vote for honest politicians, guys, but that can't be the highest level priority for voting for politicians. And Cenk's argument about how these folks won't be able to actually enact any of those policies is insane as well. I mean, there is a tipping point in Congress and in the Senate where there will be majorities, or not even majorities, but there can be voting blocks which influence political decisions. If you look the other way on one extreme person because they're honest or they're anti-Israel or whatever crazy thing Cenk wants, that's fine. What if you vote for 4 or 5 of them? What about 15, 30? Eventually, that group will coalesce when they get big enough and they will hold real political sway, and that is very dangerous. But Cenk doesn't care because as long as Israel doesn't get funded.
So I guess what I wonder then, though, is it a positive to be affiliated with people? I mean, the DSA, I went over it, and I know that you don't support a lot of this stuff, Cenk, but when you have kind of an anti-Israel perspective associated with otherwise extremely fringe and crazy figures, is that really like a net positive for the cause if it gets lumped in with these people that believe all these outlandish and crazy things? And I would imagine, like, if you're somebody who's trying to do PR for Israel, you would love to have these figures to make the face of your movement and cast anybody who doesn't want to. And to make it clear where I'm coming from on this, listen, I don't support sending more money to Israel. I don't support what Israel's done to the people of Gaza at all. But I also don't hate Israel or any support Hamas or any of that crazy stuff. But I think, is it not perilous, Cenk, to allow really radical figures to lead this kind of a movement, lest it just be all conflated as part of this, like, I mean, one of these people founded an organization that wants to, quote, eradicate Western civilization. We should probably separate ending U.S. aid to Israel from that kind of a cause, no?
Yeah, so look, that's a fair question. And so, but we don't get to choose that. The voters get to choose that. So if I, get to choose who should be the face of anti-corruption and, fighting against the donor class that includes the Israeli lobby, but again, is not just about the Israeli lobby, I'd choose Ro Khanna. He's a very reasonable, moderate person, and is very pro-American and doesn't believe any of the extreme things that you mentioned. But Brad, I think you're looking at it a little bit wrong perspective, and here's what I mean by that. And I get what you're saying, but if you look at it from a different perspective, these people won despite some of those radical opinions because the voters are so sick of the incumbents constantly taking our money and never, ever doing anything we want. I mean, again, one last thing about Israel. Look, it's not about... And don't make it a binary thing, like either you love Israel and want to give them trillions of dollars and do every war for them, or you hate Israel and love Hamas and Hezbollah. No, that's crazy. Look, Israel can do whatever they like as long as they piss off Oh, you owe us, you owe us. We don't owe you shit, dude. Okay, we don't owe you a single thing. And by the way, you owe us. Where's our $100 billion for this dumbass war you dragged us into? Where's your ground troops? Why are we talking about our ground troops? So we owe Israel absolutely nothing. They owe us trillions of dollars. So anyone in favor of that robbery should be voted out, and I don't care who the hell's against them. And you shouldn't either. It's not like they're going to do any of these ideas, but the incumbents actually do rob you. That robbery is absolutely real, and everything else is like throwing out flares to try to distract you, a bag of squirrels to distract you.
I want to bring in
this-
Sean.
I mean, maybe this analogy is a little too apt because, we have Graham Plattner running in Maine. But if Republicans nominated a neo-Nazi candidate, but he was against corruption, and there was no real chance that that candidate was going to accomplish any of the neo-Nazi goals that they had, then you would say that you shouldn't vote for that person. This idea that we're supposed to ignore that this woman founded an organization, as Brad put up, about that one of its goals is to eradicate Western civilization, and we're supposed to be like, well, she's against corruption. Like, that's insane. Again, it's analogous to, oh, this building has a bad foundation, and you could maybe find somebody who wants to fix it, or you could nominate somebody who wants to burn the building down. I think burning it down is not exactly a good not exactly a good solution.
This is a good point to stop, folks. What Sean's doing here is called reductio ad absurdum. He's not actually saying that Graham Plattner is really a Nazi, but what he's doing is he's stress testing Cenk's logic and pointing out the fact that Cenk would not apply that logic in the other political direction. So I want you to pay attention to how Cenk responds to that.
And again, all of your answers are Israel first base. Like, I don't care about Israel's war in Lebanon. Hezbollah attacked Israel after October 7th. That's their problem. That's what they have to deal with. And to quote a media pundit, people conveniently leave out who started the war. And I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who start wars and then cry about it afterwards. And of course, the media pundit that I'm quoting is Cenk Uygur, because Hezbollah, a militia that's not controlled nor authorized by the Lebanese government, decided to, over the objection of that government, start bombing northern Israel on October 8th. Like, before your pretend decide narrative actually ended up taking hold. So they started that war. They're in violation of UN Resolution 1701, which they agreed to, by the way, Unanimous Security Council resolution, which is supposed to keep them above the Litani River. So that's their business. I don't give a damn about that. I don't want to send any troops to go fight that. And I should not be electing members of Congress based on whether or not they deny that Hezbollah absolutely started bombing Israel after October 7th.
Okay, I want to give Cenk a chance to respond because you quoted him back to him. Do you think that what you're saying now is inconsistent with what you said then, Cenk?
Oh, no, actually, he proved how consistent I am. So, number one, Israel started the Iran war. Even the New York Times concedes that. Israel started the Lebanese.
Did I mention Iran?
Yeah. Okay. Well, you have to mention Iran. Otherwise, you're being disingenuous because our peace agreement, memorandum of understanding, includes Lebanon. And Israel says, no, I demand to take over southern Lebanon. I demand to take over other people's properties and homes and land. I'm owed everything. I'm owed Gaza. I'm owed the West Bank. I'm owed all of America's money and all of America's military. And I'm owed southern Lebanon. These fascists that we're forced to fund. Thank you for proving my point. They start all the wars and then they cry, oh, you have to protect us. You have to defend us. No, we don't. We don't have to give you a goddamn dollar to fight in Lebanon or in Iran. But you keep saying, no, we owe. We have to spend $100 billion. We have to spend $1 trillion. We have to spend all this money for Israel. We're all sick of it. Do you know that a lot of the right wing is in favor of those candidates winning? Not because they like their opinions. And we don't get to pick them, guys. We didn't get to say, okay, these are the three people we most want to represent us, okay? The voters in that district picked them. But if you're asking me, would I have picked those three? Well, I probably would have picked Brad Lander, but the other two, I'm not so sure I would have picked them out of everyone in the country, okay? But if you say to me, now you don't have a choice, these are the two people you're voting for, a corrupt establishment candidate that is going to steal your money and give it to a different country and betray you, or someone with some ideas that are a little wacky, that have no chance of being enforced, no chance of being in legislation whatsoever, but all their ideas that you do like, anti-corruption, representing the voters, actually do have a chance of coming to reality. I'm going to vote for the honest, non-corrupt person. And this neo-Nazi. Yeah, I know. Everyone who's against Israel is called that anyway.
I just use that as an example.
No, I know.
I
You're
didn't
saying
say
it
they
as
were
a
neo-Nazis.
quote-unquote extreme
I asked you
example.
if you would support them.
Hold on, Andy. You said you were using it as a quote-unquote extreme example.
Grant here in the studio editing this. Did Cenk just call Sean Andy?
And then you said, but it is Graham Plattner. No, it's not.
Oh, he does have a Nazi tattoo on his chest.
Attack on a good American citizen.
He does have a Nazi tattoo on his chest. The minute you have an
average American, Israel comes in with their disgusting media control and their government and their politicians. Notice Democrats are attacking Graham Plattner. Why? Because they're corporate Democrats who also serve oil and pharma and Israel and the defense contractors. And they're like, oh, did you know what kind of tattoo he has? Did you know that he once did something with
the Israelis tattooed that skull on his chest.
Slow down here. Let's slow down here.
So we just heard Cenk talk a lot. He spurred out about Israel, a bunch of other topics. But did you notice what he didn't do? He didn't address the glaring contradiction in his own logic. Cenk's not stupid. He's just dodging it because he knows he can't contend with it. He knows he's caught. It doesn't even matter whether Graham Plattner's really a neo-Nazi or not. That's not the point. The point is that Cenk would never extend that charitability to the other side of the aisle. But for leftists who just happen to be anti-Israel and honest, yet incredibly ideologically extreme, oh, come right on in.
I don't think that Graham Plattner is literally a neo-Nazi or his ideology is neo-Nazi in any way today, but you can acknowledge that he did have a Nazi tattoo. He did know it was that, and he should have had it removed a long time ago. You don't?
No, I don't
that?
acknowledge any of that. And so
of course
that's
you don't.
Okay. First of all,
let him answer.
So. When I first saw the tattoo, I was like, that's a Nazi tattoo? I had no idea. So it's a skull and bones. I don't know what the different skull and bones stand for. Maybe Graham does, but maybe he didn't. And that is a very, very normal thing. Everybody makes it sound like it's a swastika. Everybody knows a swastika is Nazi. Random skull and bones. No, not everybody knows that. And they make it seem, and why do they focus on that? Did they ask every boyfriend of Susan Collins what they've done? Did they ask the tattoos of all the establishment guys serving Israel? No, very, very conveniently, the only people that they investigate and dig up, oh, what do they have? Oh, yeah, what kind of lipstick did they use? What kind of clothes did they wear? Oh, attack, they're not for Israel, attack. And guys, you can say that that's not the case, and it's just, oh, golly gee, just happens to be against all the opponents of Israel, that the media investigates every nook and cranny of their life and attacks every lifestyle choice they've ever made, right? But you're not even going to win over your own supporters because the right wing also agrees with me. It's obvious that they're trying to control us.
I mean, you could filibuster, but it's just a denial of reality. They went after Pete Hegseth for his Georgian cross tattoo, claiming that that was some fascist symbol when it was just a religious Christian symbol. And this guy got a what was it called? A Topenhof skull, and he said he got it in Eastern Europe. You don't go to a regular tattoo bar, a tattoo parlor, and see neo-Nazi tattoo options. This is ridiculous. He knew what he was getting. He could say that he changed. He covered the tattoo up. That's fine. But again, that's a distraction from the example that I was giving. If somebody had fringe right-wing beliefs that you detested, but they were anti-Israel or, again, anti-corruption or honest about their beliefs, you would not support that person in office. You would call Republicans crazy and racist for nominating that individual. But again, you want to deflect from that, dodge from that, excuse this guy's tattoo. I mean, since I didn't know what it is, then therefore it's not what it is. Everybody, we can understand what this tattoo is, what context you would get something like that in, and it's not at a regular, ordinary tattoo parlor that you would find that.
Okay, can I answer that real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
So you're worried about the brother's tattoo. Susan Collins has voted to give our money to every one of our donors to the tune of literally trillions of dollars. Here, let me give you a quick example.
This dude just can't stop deflecting. He's going to literally say anything possible to avoid answering Sean's question and cop into the fact that he's being hypocritical. Unbelievable.
We cannot negotiate drug prices. They killed capitalism. That's free markets. We don't have free markets anymore because Big Pharma is an even bigger lobby than Israel. And they have so thoroughly bought off all of our corrupt congressmen that we can't negotiate drug prices, and we pay 10, 20, sometimes 200 times what other developed nations pay. And a lot of people die because they don't have access to those drugs or to health care because of the criminals that are our so-called representatives in Congress. So I think what Susan Collins has done to steal and rob and cheat the taxpayers is a billion times worse than any controversy about what kind of skull and bones tattoo Graham Plattner had.
Of course, big pharma is a problem. I think a lot of folks on the right who tended to trust institutions were really rocked during COVID. We saw how big pharma and government worked in cahoots, how corrupt everything was. But if you look at the leftists who were holding big pharma to a higher standard, as soon as that vaccine rolled out, they were like, where's your 9th booster shot? Why haven't you gotten that yet? They're so anti-big pharma. But the second something comes around that threatens their bodily safety, and this is also because they're atheists, they freak out and cling to whatever gives them that safety and that security. Where's the anti-big pharma principle there? Where's the honesty? Where's the anti-corruption? So your boy did a little digging.
Down your neck all day, every day, making decisions about every movement you make in your personal life, and that's just not the case.
Yeah, guys, so now they say, okay, I don't want the vaccine, and I don't even want to be tested. So if I'm highly contagious, I want to make sure I can spread it to you guys. Because I don't care about you and I don't care about your health, I don't care about your life, I don't care about your family. The only thing that matters is me. So the conservative movement in this country has just become the most selfish, entitled, bratty, spoiled movement that just does not care about anyone else. That is its defining feature, complete lack of empathy.
So back in December of 2021, Cenk wasn't merely saying that vaccines appeared to be effective based on the available evidence, a position which was, of course, complete horseshit. He was also attacking people, and namely conservatives, who were skeptical of the vaccine rollout and defending vaccine mandates. Fast forward to today, he repeatedly argues that big pharma is fundamentally corrupt and motivated by profit. So why aren't those same suspicions about big, powerful pharmaceutical companies applied during COVID? Where's the consistency, Cenk?
So you can keep talking about his tattoo, and I'll keep talking about how Susan Collins is a criminal.
It was a quick example, and this is, by the way, the meme that these people are like, I want to eradicate Western civilization, release all the criminals, open the borders, which, by the way, Biden did do in the last election. You get enough Democrats into office that believe this thing, and they will pass this into law. This has been proven to be among their first priorities when they take office. And then when you push back on that, when you actually give them specific examples, Cenk does the, oh, well, they just want to give you health care. Like, are you really against them giving you health care? Do you really not support Medicare negotiating drug prices? Yeah, I would love for Medicare to negotiate drug prices. But also, I don't want to elect people that want to open the borders and eradicate Western civilization. And again, I don't base my entire worldview on your third world grudge match between Israel and the surrounding Muslim nations. Like, that is not my problem.
Okay, I do want to. I do want to move.
I couldn't agree more. It's definitely not our problem, but we're not funding the Muslim nations. We're being forced.
We fund everybody, but
we're being forced to fund Israel. So, like, you make it sound like I want to be involved in this. No, I want to get the hell out of the Middle East. I want our military to leave immediately, okay, and not to send another dollar to the Middle East. But so it's not me, it's everyone in Washington you seem to love so much, including Susan Collins and all the corporate Democrats that these.
That's me. I love Susan Collins. Yeah, so that's my girl. Yeah. Super hot too.
I mean, you're telling me all these incumbents are lovely, and they're the ones who are forcing us to be in the Middle East.
Hang on, Cenk. Saying that these like challenger candidates are crazy or deeply flawed isn't an endorsement of the incumbent. Like, that's the kind of binary two-party, lesser of two evils thinking that could be used to justify anything.
Okay, wait, aren't you guys doing the same thing? You're saying since this rando thinks that she's going to end Western civilization.
Well, she won and you're supporting her.
Well, I'm sure she'll get enough votes for that. Okay, that since this is happening, well, that's it. You have to vote for Republicans. That's a binary choice. But by the way, to be fair to you guys, elections are a binary choice. So if you said to me, pick anyone in New York, I might not have picked those two. But if you say pick them or a corrupt incumbent, I'm going to pick them.
All right. Well, I want to drill into some of the specifics here that I think, because Cenk, it's not just about these three, and I'm sure you would acknowledge this. There's rising support for democratic socialism, whatever that means. This strand of like left-wing populist thought, the DSA itself is surging. And one of the issues where I think the DSA-aligned position has become pretty mainstream is abolish ICE. And I've been very critical of Trump's immigration crackdown, of ICE overreach, of them violating civil liberties in different ways. But at the end of the day, I think I and most Americans do think you need to have immigration enforcement deporting dangerous people who are in the country illegally. Where are you at on abolish ICE, Cenk?
So these slogans suck. And I've never been in favor of them. And I know abolish ICE is very popular these days, and for good reason, because ICE has been terrible and monstrous. And we saw it with our own eyes, and they killed American citizens. So I'm dead set against what ICE has done in this regard. But when you say abolish ICE, it makes it seem like you're not going to do any immigration enforcement, and that's not what they mean. So
Well,
I
that's
don't
what some
know-
of them mean.
That's what
It's
they
what some
say.
of them mean.
No, I know. So look, a tiny number of them, like this one of the candidates you mentioned, do mean it. But overall, if you push someone who's saying abolish ICE, they'll tell you, oh no, and this is their actual policy. No, we would reapportion some of that budget to other kinds of immigration and border enforcement. Well, then say that. Don't say you're going to abolish ICE, because it makes it sound like you're not going to do any enforcement. So that is not their policy. That's why I don't like these misleading labels. And that's why I fought against defund the police. That's why I fought against abolish ICE as slogans, because then you're unnecessarily bringing sympathy towards ICE or the police, which they didn't earn in the case of the police abuse, etc. Obviously, we should reform that. But when you say defund the police, it makes it sound like you're going to get rid of police, and it makes people panic. That's not a popular position. So at this point, if you say abolish ICE, that might actually be over 50% in the country, because we're so sick of what ICE has done. But really what the American people are saying, and what we should say better, is no, we need to reform immigration enforcement so that we have a closed border and we actually follow the laws, but we're not unnecessarily cruel and doing these mass deportations and a surveillance state and killing American citizens on the streets.
Okay, Sean, bringing you in here.
Yeah, I mean, when they say abolish ICE, they do mean no immigration enforcement. Immigration is the key to the Democrats' power. They want to flood the country with as many people as possible, keep them in a parallel status to the regular population. So eventually we can get some kind of amnesty program so that these people can become, hopefully, according to them, loyal Democratic voters. So yeah, they do mean it. They've said it time and time again. We've elected candidates that they won their primaries that are quite literally saying they want open borders and to legalize all of these people. And again, that you can't deport people who commit crimes in the United States because they have extra constitutional protections. And we have years of the Biden administration flooding these people into this country, which is something that even he, the more moderate candidate, campaigned on during the Democratic primaries. So yeah, they do mean abolish ICE, just like they meant abolish and defund the police. They did cut funding from the police. Crime exploded. That's the only reason that slogan fell out of favor, because it ended up backfiring. But yeah, like they would absolutely push not only on abolishing ICE, but on abolishing the police going forward in the future. Like this is what they actually believe. I don't know how many times they have to tell you what they support before you believe them.
Well, I think some of the Democrat politicians who say abolish ICE do mean what Cenk is saying, where they're like, well, we'll abolish ICE, but we'll have some other, because ICE in its current form didn't even exist until after 9/11, I believe. They'll have some other form of immigration enforcement. But that's like then you're essentially not really abolishing ICE. You're just rebranding it and moving it along to a different department. So then why say abolish ICE? But I will say, Cenk, some of these people genuinely do believe, like that if you go to the Democratic Socialists of America website, open immigration, ending all military border enforcement and demilitarizing the border is actually what they believe. And this is a rising tide. A lot of people in the Democratic Party, your Bernies, your AOCs, have their roots in that, but are not, fully on board with that, at least what they say. I mean, is that not an insane sentiment, Cenk? And is that should be excised from, rational progressive politics?
I will give a little credit where credit is due here to Cenk. Not everybody who says, I don't like ICE or abolish ICE necessarily means getting rid of the institution, or defund the police means getting rid of the institution. The problem is the activists that champion these policies and that influence politicians do mean that. I don't know. What do you guys think? Down in the comments, let me know what you think of the abolish ICE and the defund the police rhetoric.
doesn't even have to be excised. We don't have to ban any ideas because they're too dangerous, but that's why I'm not in DSA. And so, but if you're asking why is DSA popular, is it because of those issues? I don't think so. I think that DSA is becoming a little bit more popular now because the average person doesn't see this system working for them. So they hate the status quo so much, and understandably so, that they're looking for any alternative. And maybe they're looking for a different alternative in Oklahoma than they are in New York. But the voters are going, give me anything else. And I greatly sympathize with that. So those positions that you read off, you're right. The great majority of Democrats believe that abolish ICE is just to reapportion the funding to other categories. But then, like I keep saying, and you said, and we agree on this, like, well, then why call it that? And these days it is popular, and that's why they back to calling it that, because of how atrocious ICE has been, right? And so that's why they're leaning into that. I don't think they should lean into that. I don't think that's the best politics. But overall, like the rise of socialism. So I'm a capitalist. In order to have capitalism, though, as Adam Smith explained, you actually need government regulation so that there aren't monopolies, oligopolies, et cetera, and that the corporations don't steamroll you, right? You have to protect the free markets in a lot of ways from the corporations so it doesn't become corporatism. But the average person doesn't know all that. They just see what people in media are calling capitalism, which I actually think is corporatism. And they're saying, oh, yeah, when you take all your money and you give it to these super profitable companies and they never pay their own bills, and now we're going to build data centers and make you pay so much more in your electricity bill that's going to go directly to benefit those corporations.
Well, I don't know if that's true, Cenk. I don't know if
Yeah, a lot of data centers definitely do that. Why do you think people are so angry about that? But just
a
to
lot of
finish this point
misinformation
real
is being
quick-
spread about the data
Propaganda
centers,
like
though.
what you're pushing right now.
Okay. Yeah, okay, that's fine.
I mean, we
So
could
we'll
have
come
another
back to
debate
that. We'll
about
come
that.
back to
Sorry, I don't mean to derail you.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. But overall, when they see what is being described as capitalism screwing them, some people in the blue states are going, I don't know, maybe let's try socialism, right? And by the way, socialism is not communism. It depends on what you mean by socialism. Northern Europe is so-called socialist, and Northern Europe is in fantastic shape.
No, Cenk. According to Marx, socialism is the stage before communism, where there is a overarching totalitarian state that precedes the utopia. And European countries that Cenk and other leftists champion are not actually socialist. Although Scandinavian countries actually have more economic freedom than the United States and less regulation. It's really just a bullshit Bernie Sanders talking point that leftists have just driven into the ground. In fact, one of their prime ministers actually had to come out and say, no, Bernie, stop doing that. We're not socialist. So it's just complete nonsense.
So, like, the reality is we are lived in a mixed economy. A lot of things we do or that the government does is public, the military, the fire departments, the police departments, et cetera, and it should be public. And a lot of the stuff we do is private and should be private. So when you talk about so-called socialism, the real conversation is around, wait, is universal health care socialist? Because every other developed nation has universal health care, paid family leave. Every nation on earth other than us and a couple of island nations have paid family leave. If you're calling that socialist, then American people are going to love socialism because those things poll at 70%, 84%. So let's be clear about the terms.
Okay,
Yeah,
Sean, your thoughts.
I mean, they're quite clear about what they mean. Abolishing private property rights. C.O. Weaver, who was appointed as the tenant advocate for Mamdani, impoverish the white middle class. I mean, these people are clear about what they mean time and time again. And by the way, it is not the regular struggling people that are electing these candidates. Look at the demos in the Democratic primary. They're largely being uplifted up by wealthy white progressives in the primary. In the general elections, they end up crushing with minority voters, because they tend to be more loyal to the Democratic Party. So this is like, luxury belief base voting for the luxury belief candidates. Like, this is what they support. It's represented by the polling. And that is why in New York in particular, we're uniquely vulnerable to these kind of candidates winning in these primary elections. So yeah, these aren't the people that are disaffected. Like, those people have already left New York City. Like, we've seen a decline under very left-wing policies in the city of New York of families with children under 5. We've lost about 8 15% of them since 2019. So the families, they're not here. And if you looked at the data of people who actually have children, they're voting in the other direction. So this is the elite. These are the concerns of the elite who don't have to live with the consequences of what they actually vote for, voting for these kind of fringe candidates that do represent them. I mean, to be fair, I mean, this is who they want. These like lifelong students, people who don't have real jobs, Nepo babies. I mean, this is who these people are. So they pick their best representatives.
I think New York City is an interesting example, Cenk, that I'm curious for your thoughts on. So Zohran Mamdani, right? Because what you describe is, listen, I have some disagreements and quibbles with different policies that you might support, but you're broadly describing like liberal capitalism, like a mixed economy, a society that has, you know, a social safety net, but a largely free market economy. I do believe that's what most Americans actually believe in. But someone like Zohran Mamdani, his entire adult life, his entire political career was like tweeting Karl Marx quotes and talking about seizing the means and all these things. And then maybe when he actually ran for mayor, put on a little bit more of a veneer of more like what you're saying, that he just wants reform and just wants more social services. But I think at heart, and some of his appointments and other things have shown that radical tendency. I mean, are these people just democratic capitalists, or are they, some of them are in fact Marxists to the point of verging on communism? No, Cenk?
Yeah, so good news, he's the mayor, so we're going to find out, and we're already finding out. So there was scare tactics used against him. Oh my God, he's going to do this or that. And by the way, he did once say something about seizing the means of production, so I get it. That's fair, right? That's a fair criticism of Mamdani. And I said throughout the campaign, listen, his policies are a little to the left of me. I don't believe in rent control. I don't think that that's helpful. I think it is ironically counterproductive, et cetera. But I want him to try things. And I don't need him to try all my ideas. I would need him to try the ideas the voters of New York are in favor of. And then let's see how they go.
Oh boy. Did you guys catch that?
Listen, his policies are a little to the left of me. I don't believe in rent control. I don't think that that's helpful. I think it is ironically counterproductive, et cetera. But I want him to try things. And I don't need him to try all my ideas. I would need him to try the ideas the voters of New York are in favor of. And then let's see how they go.
What's the point in trying something if you know it doesn't work? Yeah, it's popular. But just because something's popular doesn't mean it's going to be good policy. And rent control hardly ever results in the actual positive benefits people want to see. You know, let's take a little sidebar here. What does rent control actually accomplish? First, rent control actually reduces the supply of available housing. So if you're a landlord and the government tells you that you can't charge market rent, your return on that property drops. In some cases, landlords can actually lose money every month while keeping a unit occupied. So what ends up happening? Some owners simply decide not to rent the unit at all. Why deal with the headache, right? Others convert properties to different uses where the regulations allow, and developers become much less interested in building new rental housing in the first place. The financial incentive just isn't there. It discourages the very thing you need to solve a housing shortage with: more housing. Second, rent control actually leads to the deterioration of existing housing. This one should be a no-brainer, folks. If a landlord is losing money or barely breaking even on a property, what incentive do they have to renovate, to replace the roof, upgrade the plumbing, do basic upkeep? Even this sort of stuff gets delayed or even not done at all because the return simply isn't there. If the landlord's losing $150 on a unit each month, why is he going to come fix your pipes? What this leads to is that over time, the quality of the housing stock declines. And ironically, the people living in those rent-controlled units are the ones who suffer the consequences. Those units essentially become what's called a golden prison. Because not only does the unit get worse over time, but there's no way you're going to leave. Why would you leave a unit paying $400 a month in New York City when the market rate is $3,500 for the same unit elsewhere? Third, rent control unit apartments don't necessarily go to the people who need them the most. So this is something that a lot of people don't realize. And it differs by jurisdiction. But in a place like New York City, rent-stabilized apartments aren't simply handed out to the poorest families. The allocation of rent control units is actually a lottery system, not necessarily income. I mean, look at Zohran Mamdani before he became mayor. He came from a very wealthy family and was a state assemblyman, but he lived in a rent-controlled apartment. Remind me again how that helps the working class? And finally, and I think this is the biggest issue, rent control puts even more pressure on the middle class. So developers and landlords still have to make projects financially viable, especially long-term. They have to break even somewhere. So if government policies reduce profitability in one part of the market, they'll naturally shift investment toward projects where they can still earn a return and ideally make up for those losses. That usually means building more luxury housing while building less middle-income housing. Now you've created a two-tier system. You have either rent-controlled units or luxury units. If you're lucky enough to have a rent-controlled apartment, congrats. Now, if you're not, you're competing for a smaller pool of market-rate housing, which pushes rents even higher. That leaves middle-class professionals with three terrible options to choose from. First, they have to stomach exorbitant rent prices for market-rate luxury apartments. 2, they hope they win the lottery and get a rent-controlled unit. Or 3, they just decide to leave the city altogether. That's not making housing more affordable. It's making affordable housing scarcer for everybody who doesn't already have it. This brings me back to Cenk's argument. If you already believe the policy is likely to fail, why are you excited to see a politician like Zoran Mamdani implement more of it? Why are you willing to champion these DSA candidates who have equally insane proposals? That's the inconsistency. And it's exactly why I think Sean's criticism landed. The goal of rent control is admirable. Everybody wants housing to be affordable, and it's definitely popular, like we said. But good intentions don't repeal economics. And when you reduce the incentive to build housing, reduce the incentive to maintain housing, and fail to target assistance to the people who need it most, you push more costs onto everybody outside the rent control system. And thus, you shouldn't really be surprised when affordability actually gets worse, not better. Thanks for bearing with me on that, guys. Now back to the debate.
But did he say, okay, well, I'm going to come into New York and I'm going to seize all the banks that are in New York and Wall Street? No, he said, I'm going to do free buses and I'm going to do city-run grocery stores, which I think is kind of Muslim unemployment plan, because almost all the bodegas in New York are run by Muslims. So I didn't love any of those particular policies, but I loved the idea of change and not serving the status quo. So I was totally in favor of him. Good news, he's the mayor now, and we could see exactly what he's doing, and he's not doing any of the extreme stuff. He's doing things
he only
that
has so much authority and power. He can't do everything, just change it all at once.
No, but wait, Brad, you can't say I'm worried he's going to seize all the capital and do all these crazy things and turn New York communist. And then when he doesn't do that and he actually does popular things, say, well, that's because he doesn't have enough power.
I didn't say that I thought he would actually seize the means. I'm saying that's who he is at heart and what he believes in.
But so what matters is what he does as mayor. And so far, the things he's done as mayor are intensely popular and not one bit radical. So the proof's in the pudding.
Well, again,
Sean,
popular and radical are not two different things. I mean, you say, oh, I don't support rent control, but I'm excited to see him try things. Well, he got his rent freeze. Like, congratulations to him. He's doubling down on the same rent stabilization program that has failed in the city of New York since the 1970s. We've had rent control since the 1940s. We can look at New Rochelle, 30 minutes from me, north of New York City. Right now, they cleaned up their zoning code, allowed building. Rents are falling. We can look at Austin, Texas, Minneapolis. So we know it actually works in terms of, fixing affordability. But Mamdani, of course, is not in favor of that. He's in favor of price controls. He announced an effort as the mayor's office to take buildings that are in disrepair. By the way, they're in disrepair because they can't afford the upkeep on the buildings because of rent control and rent stabilization, because he believes in community ownership of these properties. This is what he said that he wanted to do when he was at the Gravel Institute, and he's implementing it right now. So we could pretend, oh, well, he's trying things and it's popular now. It's like, yeah, rent control sounds good. This is one of the major problems. Let's see how it goes. But we have, a 70 plus years of history of this policy in the city of New York absolutely failing, and he's doubling down on it and pretending it's changed. So yeah, he is doing the radical things that he said he was going to do. He is proving to be the socialist that we all knew he was, but we're just going to pretend it away because he smiles and he talks about the Knicks as if it was his accomplishment.
Okay, well, yeah,
just
sorry.
real quick on that.
Real quick,
So look, guys, if more good news. If rent control, by the way, rent control is not communist. There's been rent control in American cities in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, all the way through today, and we never turned communist. But if it turns out that it's a failure, then great. Then your next
why are you saying it like
get
it's a
to run it.
mystery? Like, and you've said in the past that rent control doesn't work. You're
Sean,
like, if it turns out to not work out, this policy that before Mamdani I told my audience repeatedly doesn't work. Like, come on, it won't work.
So Sean, no, that's my theory, and that's what I believe. But I'm not the voters in New York. The voters in New York decided they were so sick of the housing prices that they'd want to try it. And if it turns out that it backfires, then you'll get to run a candidate saying, see, Mamdani's idea on that didn't work. And then you accidentally said something really important. You said, well, it could be radical even if it's popular. And because you know that all of his policies today are popular. So now you're calling all the voters radical. And I would say to you that maybe all the voters aren't radical, that maybe your beliefs are a little bit radical if you think that the average American or the average voter is radical. And I've never seen the voters be called radical when they vote for corrupt establishment, Democrats or Republicans. They're never, ever called radical then. But the minute they vote for someone who is outside of this current corrupt system, all of a sudden they're radicals. So I want the audience and the viewers to notice that because of who gets smeared and who doesn't.
Okay,
and I
guys.
think that
you should notice that they are radical. Yes, New York is a more left-wing place than other places in the country. I live here. I am the New York City voters. I have to deal with this nonsense. I have to deal with rental increases going up in market rate apartments because unlike Mamdani, I wasn't lucky enough to get into a rent-stabilized place while I'm the children of multimillionaires and was in the state assembly. Like, we actually have to deal with the consequences of this. And yeah, it's a stupid policy. It is a radical policy. And again, this is something that we've been doing since the 70s. It hasn't worked. 44% of New York City apartments are already in rent stabilization. They've been capped at increases at 1.5% a year since 1974. This does not work. This is a failed policy. In Los Angeles, you got 60% of your apartments in rent stabilization. Is your city more affordable? Is it that much more affordable than New York City? In San Francisco, you have around 2/3 of the apartments in rent stabilization. Is San Francisco more affordable than New York and Los Angeles because they do more rent stabilization? No, it's a ridiculous policy. They are radical because it's something that has been done away with in large swaths of the country. So most of America has moved on from this, and Mamdani is doubling down on it. And it's not going to work out because, again, economic flat earthers, their theories don't work.
Okay, I guess we will see how it goes. I share your skepticism, but who knows? We are a little bit over time here. I really appreciate both of you coming together for an honest dialogue and conversation. Cenk Uygur, Sean Fitzgerald, links below in the description to check out their work. Thank you guys both so much for coming on and making the time.
Thank you
for
guys.
having me.
So that was the debate, guys. Let's analyze how each participant did. So Cenk had several issues that recurred and kept popping back up. First, Cenk kept throwing out red herrings and consistently pivoted when he didn't want to answer a question, specifically around the Graham Plattner Nazi tattoo thing. Sean made a very good point about how Cenk wouldn't extend that charitability to the other side of the aisle, and Cenk never answered it. Second was his appeal to popularity. Again, just because something is popular does not mean it's going to be a sound political policy. And last was his inconsistency. This is where Cenk argued that it's good to try rent control policies, even though it's been proven over and over that rent control policies produce negative outcomes. And for Sean, he's a pretty strong debater. He stayed consistent, he stayed logical, and he stayed on topic. All in all, I think Cenk got blown out of the water here. Now, credit where credit is due to, Cenk went on and actually debated Sean on this, but Cenk didn't do his research. You see, Sean on his channel, he breaks down what the Young Turks do a lot. He knows Cenk backwards and forwards. I don't think Cenk did any research into Sean, and it showed. But anyways, those are just my thoughts, guys. Let me know what y'all think down in the comments. If you think my analysis was good, if it sucked, if you want to punch me in my dumb face and knock that stupid red hat off my head, let me know. And again, thanks for the support. It's been an awesome week getting this channel up and going. I really appreciate everything, guys. Thanks. Are you looking for more content like this? Hit that subscribe button and check out the link on screen. Come on, you know you want to do it.